To hide elements, you can use opacity or display none. Now let's build daily interaction number 21. Hey, what's up everyone? John with WebDev for you, and welcome to the Daily Interaction series, where every weekday we build a new interaction or animation in Webflow. I'm really excited about today's daily interaction. We're going to be building a category panel reveal on hover. So here when I hover over these different panels, we can see that a menu appears and the user will be able to click on these different menu items to go to a different page or an external link on your site. So yeah, it's really fun. Here we can see we have different categories: painting, drawing, print, ceramic, sculptures, and glass. I just decided to pick this topic just to kind of showcase this here. But we also have different colors, and when you hover over, the background becomes black and the links appear. So it's a really nice effect. It can be a really nice way for users to navigate through your site. And this was actually inspired by this site here, secretsdevoyages.com, and looks good. They have that panel reveal effect. It's a really nice site as well. So here I'll scroll to the top. They have this really nice background video, and I scroll down and they have some really nice interactions and animations. All right, looks good. So yeah, this is what we will be building here. We'll be building this category panel reveal on hover. All right, so to view more daily interactions and premium content, visit webdevforyou.com. Also, be sure to subscribe below to receive a notification every time there is a new daily interaction. Okay, so here I have a blank Webflow project, and we'll start with the daily interaction class naming convention. So it's d dash the daily interaction number, so today is 21, and then the element. So every element on the site will have a d-21 in front of it, and this is for consistency purposes and so that we know we're working with daily interaction number 21. All right, so first we're going to add all the elements. We're going to add the panels, and then we'll create the interaction so that when the user hovers, the panel expands and the menu appears. Okay, so the first thing I'll do here is add a section. So I'll add an element, I'll add a section, and I'll give it the class name d-21-section. And for the height, I'll set it to 100 VH. So it spans the full height of the viewport, and it will be the full width as well. Then I'll scroll down to background. I'll set the background color to black. And I'll scroll up and I'll set the display setting to flex, justify center, and align center. So anything I place within this section will be in the center. So now I'll add an element and I'll add a div block. So this is going to be the wrapper for the panels. So I'll give this the class name d-21 wrapper. And for this, I'll give it a specific width and height, and we can adjust this width and height on the different width devices. But for now, I'm going to start with a width of 960 pixels and a height of 500 pixels. So the panels will go inside of this wrapper. Okay, and I also want to set a display setting of flex and horizontal and justify start and align stretch. So we're going to place div blocks inside of here, and because this is set to align stretch, those div blocks will be the same height as this wrapper. All right, so now I'll add an element, I'll add a div block, and I'll give it the class name d-21 panel wrapper. Okay, so for this, what I want to do, we could see here that it's now a flex item, and that's because the parent element, here if we go to the navigator and we look at the structure of the site, so we have the section, we have the wrapper, and we have the panel wrapper. So because the wrapper has a flex display setting, this panel wrapper, because it's a child element, is now a flex item. So I can go to the styles and I can set it to expand. So it fills the entire parent element, and because the parent element has a display setting of align stretch or flex align stretch, it fills the height and it'll fill the width. So it's trying to fill all the available space here. All right, looks good. So I want 6 panels, so I'll go to the navigator and I'll select Command C to copy, and then I'll select wrapper and paste 5 more times until I have 6 panels. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, looks good. So now I'll go into styles. For the panel wrapper as well, I want to set it to a position of relative because we are going to have absolute position divs inside of this panel wrapper, and I want those divs to be relative to this wrapper, not relative to some other parent element. So by setting the panel wrapper to relative, anything inside of it will be relative to it. All right, looks good. So the next thing I'm gonna do is add an image. So we're gonna first work with the first panel wrapper, and then we're actually gonna copy and paste. But I wanted to copy and paste first so we could see that we have 6 different panels. All right, so here we have panel wrapper, the first one. So I'll select it and I'll add an element and I'll add a div block and I'll give this the class name d-21. This is going to be the image. Okay, and for this I'll set a position of absolute and full. So it fills its entire parent element, which is the panel wrapper. So because the panel wrapper has a position of relative, this absolute position div is filling that panel wrapper because we set it to a position of absolute and full. Okay, so now I'll scroll down to the background. I'll add a background image. So yeah, I'll add a background image here. I'll choose an image and I'll select, the first one is painting. So I'll select this image of the painting. I'll set it to cover, position it in the center, and I don't need it to be tiled. So for tile, I'll say none. And I don't want it to be fixed either. So I'll say none for fixed, and looks good. So now that we have an image inside of the panel wrapper, we can create, or I can better showcase the panel expanding when we hover over it. So to do that, I'm going to select, the first panel wrapper here, and I'll go to styles, and here we have states. So I'll select states, and on hover, I'll select the hover state. We're going to click on this gear icon here in the flex item settings. We'll click on this gear icon, and on hover, we're going to make it grow to 2, so it gets a bit wider. You could say like 3 or 4, depending on how wide you wanted it to get. But for this, I find that 2 works well. So it's going to grow to a flex basis or flex grow of 2 when we hover over it. So now if I hover over any of these panel wrappers, we can see, let me preview here, or actually let me go back to the none state. And if I hover over, we can see it expands. All right, so I don't want it to expand so quickly. I want to add some easing to it. So on the none state for the panel wrapper, we can scroll down to transitions, and I'll add a transition. And for the transition property, I'll set it to all properties. I find that when adding a transition to a flex setting, I find that all properties works best because in Safari, for some reason, when you try to select like flex grow, it doesn't work as well in Safari. But by setting it to all properties does work well in Safari and all other browsers there. So I'll select all properties, and for the timing, I'll set it to 500 milliseconds, and for the easing, I'll say ease. So you can select from these different easings, but I find that ease works well. Okay, so I'll close this here, and now when I hover, we have the smooth expansion there for the panel wrapper. All right, perfect. So I wanted to add the image first so we could see that image expand as we hovered over the panel. All right, looks good. So the next thing we want to do is add the image overlay. So if you notice in the demo, each panel has a different overlay. First, they're all going to have the same one, and then we'll assign a combo class to change the color for each. So here, for the first panel wrapper, I'll add a div block, and I'll give it the class name d-21 image overlay. Okay, and for this, I'll set it to a position of absolute and full, so it fills the entire panel wrapper. And I'll go to background, give it a background color of this purple here. And I'll give it an opacity of 80%, so it's a bit see-through and we can see the image behind it. All right, looks good. So the next thing we're going to do is add the text. So each category has a text applied to it. So we'll go back into the panel wrapper and I'll add another element. And actually, before I do this, I want that text to be in the center. So I'll select the panel wrapper, go into styles, and we'll give it a display setting of flex and justify center and align center. So yeah, horizontal, justify center and align center. So that text will be in the center. So now I'll go to the navigator, select panel wrapper, add an element, and I'll add a text block. And for the text block, I'll give it the class name D-21 panel text. And I'll set it to a position of relative, so it comes to the front. And I'll quickly rename this here to painting, or let's make it all lowercase, painting. And I'll style the text a bit. So in typography, I'll say circular bold, and I'll set the font weight to bold, give it a color of white, and I'll change the font size to, let's say, 34. And actually we can see that this text is affecting the panel wrapper. So rather than a position of relative, I want to set it to absolute so it doesn't change the width of the panel wrapper. And we're going to rotate it so that it ends up vertically, and it'll look good when the panel expands. All right, so we set a font size of 34 pixels and a font, let's set the line height to 50 pixels. So now to rotate the text, we're going to go down to transforms and we'll add a new transform. So I'll click the plus here and we're going to rotate it on the Z axis. So it rotates counterclockwise, and it doesn't rotate like on the X like this or on the Y like this. We want to rotate it so it just turns. So on the Z axis, we're going to say -90. So it rotates that text counterclockwise, -90 degrees, and it'll be in the center. So perfect, that's exactly what we want. If I preview, the text painting is in the center and looks good. It's not going to get this wide. Once we add the image and all these elements to the other panels, we'll see kind of how wide each panel gets. All right, so the next thing we need to do is add the menu, or the menu links. So to do that, I'll select panel wrapper, and I'm actually going to hide the panel text for the moment so it doesn't interfere as we're building the links. So here I'll select panel text, go into styles, and I'll say display none. Then I'll go into the navigator, I'll select the panel wrapper, and I'll add an element. I'll add a div block, and I'll name this D-21 menu wrapper. Okay, and for this, I'll set it to a position of absolute and full. So first, we're gonna have a menu wrapper. So it fills the entire panel wrapper. And for this, I'm gonna give it a display setting of flex, horizontal, justify center, and align center. So we're gonna have a menu wrapper, and then we're gonna have a menu item wrapper and put the links inside the menu item wrapper. And the reason we're doing that is because it makes it easier when we build the interaction to kind of work with the menu item wrapper. It'll be a bit more clear in a second. Okay, so inside the menu wrapper, I'm going to add another div block. So I'll add an element. I'll add a div block, and for this, I'll call it D-21 menu item wrapper. And I'll give it a display setting of flex. And this time I'm going to set it to vertical because the menu links are going to be vertically stacked. So I'll say vertical, justify center, and align center. So if we go to the demo, when I hover over, we can see those links are stacked on top of each other. All right, looks good. So let me go into the navigator and we'll look at the structure. So we have the menu wrapper, and then we have the menu item wrapper. So inside this menu item wrapper, I'm going to add text links and lines as well. So I'll select it here. I'll add an element and I'll add a text link. So I'll select it here and then I'll style the text a bit. So go to styles, I'll give it the class name D-21 text link. And let's see, for the text, I'm going to set it to circular book. And yeah, font weight of normal, set the color to white, and a font size of 14 pixels and a line height of 20 pixels looks good. We do notice it has this underline here. So to remove the underline for the text link, just say none for the underline to remove it. And perfect. And I'll just rename this here to link 1 and looks good. So now we want to add, so if we look at the demo, there's a little line underneath. So to add that, we'll go back in here, we'll select the menu item wrapper, we'll add an element, I'll add a div block, and I'll give it the class name D-21 line. And for this, I'll give it a width of 15 pixels and a height of 2 pixels for the line. And I'll set the background to white. Okay, so we have, if we look here, we have the link 1 and the line. So now I'm going to copy the link 4 more times, and I'm going to copy the line 4 more times as well. So we have 5 text links. So here I'll hit Command C on the text link to copy. Then I'll select the menu item wrapper and I'll paste 5 times. Then I'll select D-21 line, copy, hit Command C to copy. Then in the menu item wrapper, I'll paste 5 times as well. Then I'll just bring the lines in between the text links so that they're in between each text link, and looks good. Then I'll select the line and add some top and bottom margin. So I'll go to styles, hold down Alt, and to adjust the top and bottom margin, I'll hold down Alt and give it a top and bottom margin of, let's say, 10 pixels. All right, so there we have the menu. I'll just rename, link 1, link 2, link 3, link 4, and link 5. All right, looks good. So now I'll bring back the panel text. So we have the menu and the menu item wrapper, and the text link and the lines inside of it. So I'll select the panel text and I'll bring it back in. So I'll say display block to bring back the text. All right, looks good. So we have all the elements we need to create the interaction. What I'm going to do now is actually go into the navigator, say collapse all. Then I'm going to expand to see all the panel wrappers. And I'm going to delete all the panel wrappers except the first one, because the first one has all the elements we need for all the panel wrappers. So I'll just hit Command C to copy, then select the wrapper, and then just paste 6 times there. So there we can see we have 6 different panels, and they all have the elements we need. We'll change the image and the color after we've added the interaction. I also want to add some margin to the left and right of each panel, so I'll select the first panel wrapper, go into styles, I'll hold down Alt here, and I'll add about let's say 20 pixel margin to the left and the right of each panel, and perfect. So now I preview, and we have those panels there. So now we can add the interaction. So to do that, I'll go back into the designer. I'll select the first panel wrapper. I'll go into interactions. Here for element trigger, I'll click the plus and I'll select mouse hover. So on mouse hover, we're going to start an animation. We're going to add a new timed animation. So I'll click the plus and I'll say D-21 mouse in. All right, so the first thing I want to occur, I want to hide the menu item wrapper so we don't see the links, and I want to move it down 20%. So if we notice in the demo, when we hover over the menu items move up a bit and they appear. So in the interaction, I'm going to select here, I'm going to select the menu item wrapper. We don't need to apply it to the menu wrapper because it's transparent, and we actually just want to affect the menu item wrapper. So I'll select it here. I'll go into interactions, add a new timed action, and I'll select opacity, and I'll set the opacity to 0% so we don't see it. And I'll set it as the initial state. So initially we can't see the menu items. And then I'll add another timed action. I'll say move, and I'll move it down 20%. All right, and I'll set it as the initial state. Okay, so the next thing I want to happen, so when we hover over, the image overlay disappears, and then we add kind of a black overlay to the menu wrapper. And then we have the panel text disappear, then the menu comes back in, and it moves up 20%. So we'll just add that. So the first thing I'm going to do is hide the panel text. So I'll select it here in the navigator, and I'll say add a new timed action. I'll set an opacity of 0%. For the easing, I'll say ease. So all these interactions will have an easing of ease because I find it looks really nice with that easing, and it'll have a duration of 0.5. All right, so the next thing I want to do is set the opacity of the image overlay to 0%. So I'll go to the navigator, I'll select the image overlay, go into interactions, add a new timed action. I'll say opacity, and I'll set the opacity to 0%, give it an easing of ease, and I'll start it with the panel text. So I'll click, hold, and drag and place it on top of it so they start at the same time. So all of these timed actions are going to start at the same time and have the same duration. All right, so the next thing I want to do is add a black overlay to the menu wrapper. So here I'll select menu wrapper, go into interactions, add a new timed action, and here I'll say BG color for background color. I'll set the background color to black with an opacity of 80%, so it's a bit see-through, and looks good there. I'll give it an easing of ease, click, hold, and drag to place on top of it. So it starts with the other ones, looks good. And now I want to bring the menu item wrapper, I want to bring it up, or I want to have it appear and bring it up 20%. So I'll select the menu item wrapper, I'll say opacity, bring it to 100%, give it an easing of ease, click, hold, and drag, place it on top of the other ones to start at the same time, and then I'll move it. So I'll say move, and I'll move it up back to 0%, which is its original position. Then I'll click, hold, and drag to start it with the other ones and give it an easing of ease. All right, looks good. So those are the timed actions that we need. So now if I preview and I hover over, perfect. So we can see we have all the interactions we need. The overlay fades out and the text fades out. We have a black overlay, and then the menu comes in. All right, looks good. So I do want to have this be applied to all panels. So to do this, we want to, rather than affect, here if we select a timed action, we can affect a selected element, or we can select specific classes. So here where it says effect, I'm going to select class, and action will affect multiple elements with the same class. So I'll select it here, and here, rather than affecting all elements with this class, I'm going to affect only children with this class. So action will affect only the elements inside the interaction trigger. So here I'll select it, and we know that all of these elements are children of the interaction trigger, because if I go to the navigator, the interaction trigger is the panel wrapper, and we know this because it has the green circle with the lightning bolt symbol, and that means it's the interaction trigger, and all the other elements are inside of it, meaning that they're child elements of the panel wrapper or the interaction trigger. So the panel wrapper is the parent element and the interaction trigger, and all the elements inside of it are children elements of the interaction trigger. So here I'll go back into the interaction. So we just want to apply that setting to all the elements here in the timed actions. So I'll select it, select class, and select only children with this class. And select this one, select only children with this class, and only children with this class. So if the element is added more than one time in the timed action, it'll apply that, it'll affect all the elements within the timed actions with the same class. So yeah, you'll know that you applied it because there's this paintbrush symbol with a blue background. All right, so now if I preview, we can see it's still only applied to the first panel here. So to apply it to all of them, I'm going to close this. And here, rather than triggering just an element, so right now we're only triggering one panel, and we know this because only this first panel wrapper is an interaction trigger. So rather than triggering just one element, we're going to trigger a class. So any class with the class name, or any element with the class name D-21 panel wrapper will become an interaction trigger. So we select class here, and now if we go to the navigator, all the panel wrappers are an interaction trigger, and we're only affecting the children of each interaction trigger, so each panel will have that effect. All right, so now I'll preview, I hover over, and perfect. So we're only affecting the children of each specific interaction trigger. All right, looks good. So now we just need to apply a hover out animation so that when we hover out, it goes back to its original state. So to do that, we'll select the first panel wrapper. I'll go to interactions, and on hover out, we're going to start an animation. And here I'm going to duplicate the mouse in because it already has a lot of the settings we need for the mouse out. So I'll select these three dots here, and I'll say duplicate, and I'll select D-21 mouse in 2. So I'll select it here, I'll click on it, and I'll just rename it to D-21 mouse out. And for the mouse out, we don't need initial states because we already set that for the mouse in interaction. So I'll just delete these here. So I'll select them and delete the initial states. And here we just need to change the values for all of these elements. So they're already here. We just want to kind of add the reverse animation. So for the panel text, so the reverse would be the menu moves down and disappears, the panel text comes back in, the black overlay disappears, and the color overlay comes back in. So here for the panel text, rather than an opacity of 0%, we'll set it to 100%. Then the image overlay, rather than 0%, we'll say 100%. The menu wrapper, rather than a background color of black with an opacity of 80%, we'll set it to transparent. And the menu item wrapper, we'll set it back to 0% so we don't see it. And we'll move the menu item wrapper down 20% so it disappears and moves down, so the next time it comes back in, it'll move up. All right, and that's it. And it is affecting the class and only children with this class because we copied it from the mouse in interaction, so those settings are still applied to it. So now when I preview, perfect. So we hover in, comes in, hover out, it disappears, and we have that category panel reveal effect. All right, looks good. So the next thing we're going to do is change the text for each category, and we're going to change the color and the background image. So I'll go into the designer, and I'll go into the navigator, and for each one, what I'll do is I'll hide the menu wrapper. So I'll select the menu wrapper, and for display setting, I'll say none. So I can just double click to rename the text, and I'll rename this to so it's painting, drawing. Let's see the demo here. Print. So the third one is print. Then we have ceramics. Then sculptures. Yep. And glass. Okay. All right. So there we've renamed them. Now we want to change the image for each one. So to change the image, what I'll do is on the second panel wrapper, I'll select D-21 image, and then I'll give it a combo class of 2, so we can apply specific properties to this image. So we can change the image, and it will only be applied to this panel because we added a combo class of 2. So I'll go to the image, click on it in background, say replace image, and I'll choose this image of drawing. Then I'll go to the third panel, select D-21 image, give it a combo class of 3, go to the background here, click on the background, select replace image, and I'll select this image of the book. I'll close this here, go to the navigator, select the fourth image in the fourth panel, give it a combo class of 4, go to the image, click on it, select replace image, and I'll say these images of the bowl, or this image of the bowl. Then I'll go into the fifth image, give it a combo class of 5, and go to the background, replace image, and I'll select the sculptures here. Go into the navigator, select the sixth image, and give it a combo class of 6, and click on the background, replace image, and I'll say select this image of these flowers in different glasses. Okay, so there we've changed all the images and it looks good. So now let's change the color overlay. So we'll do the same thing basically we did for the image, we'll do for the overlay. So here for the second panel wrapper, I'll select image overlay, go to styles, give it a combo class of 2. For the background, I'll select, let's see here, the magenta color. So I'll select the color here, select the magenta, and give it an opacity of 80%. Then I'll go to the third image overlay, go into styles, and give it a combo class of 3. Go into the color, select blue for the background color, and an opacity of 80%. Go into the navigator, select the fourth image overlay, give it a combo class of 4. Go into the background, and I think it's this lighter pink. Select the background, select the lighter pink, give it an opacity of 80%. Go into the navigator, select the fifth image overlay, give it a combo class of 5. And this one is, I think, the darker purple. So select it here, I'll select this darker purple and give it an opacity of 80%. And then the sixth image overlay here in the navigator, give it a combo class of 6 so we can apply individual properties to it. And click the background and give it this magenta color here and say 80% for the opacity. And perfect, so each one has a different color and looks good. So let's bring back the menu wrapper now. So just scroll up here, select menu wrapper in the first panel wrapper, go into styles, and it had a display setting of flex, so I'll just select flex here instead of none. So just say flex, and it'll bring back the menu wrapper. So now if I preview, they each have different color, and we have that interaction. All right, so the last thing we need to do is add this alternating up and down to the second, third, and sixth wrapper, or sixth panel, so that certain ones are up and down, so it has an alternating effect. So to do that, what I'll do is go into the designer, and let me collapse all. So for the second wrapper, I'll select it here. I'll give it a combo class of down, and scroll down to position. It has a position of relative, and from the top, I want to move it down -60 pixels. So it goes, so it moves down 60 pixels from the top. So I'll say -60, and it'll move that panel down. So now if I preview, we have this alternating effect where the second panel is lower. So I just need to apply that same combo class to the fourth and sixth panel so that they move down as well. So I'll select the fourth panel in the navigator, and I'll apply the combo class of down. It moves it down. Then the sixth one, I'll apply the combo class of down, and it moves it down as well. And there we go. We have the alternating panels with the menu revealing there, or the links revealing. They're all different colors. They all have different text, and looks good, and different images behind them. All right, looks good. So I know I covered a lot in this video tutorial. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comment section for this video, or in the forum section for this daily interaction. All right, looks good. And let's look at the different devices. So on tablet, it looks okay. Mobile landscape, it's a little bit thin. Mobile portrait, I'd probably change the design for mobile portrait. On mobile landscape, what I'd do here is maybe reduce the margin on the left and right of the panels. So I'll select the panel wrapper, scroll down to the margin, hold down Alt, and just give it a margin of like 10 pixels. All right, and yeah, mobile landscape, maybe I might change the design for mobile landscape. Mobile portrait definitely looks a little bit too thin, but let me preview. Yeah, so here we have it on desktop. Tablet looks pretty good, so the user would tap to kind of reveal the links. And then mobile landscape, not bad, still looks pretty good. So it's a bit thin, but could kind of get away with it there. So yeah, that's mobile landscape. And mobile portrait, yeah, it's definitely a bit too thin, so I probably change the design for mobile portrait and probably mobile landscape as well. But you could get away with it. Looks pretty good. But yeah, tablet looks good, and desktop definitely. All right, so it looks good. Yeah, just might change the design for the last two here. All right, yeah, so that's it for yeah, daily interaction number 21. We did cover a lot, but I thought this was a really fun interaction. It was inspired by this site here, secretsdevoyages.com, where they had this panel reveal effect and the links inside of it. It is a really cool site. So yeah, just yeah, panel secretsdevoyages.com. All right, yeah, so that is it for daily interaction number 21, the category panel reveal on Hover. Looks good. All right, so to view more daily interactions and premium content, visit webdevforyou.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next daily interaction.